Hello and welcome to the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League Assistant Commissioner Debate. It is now going to be debate morning by the time all of you are able to view this. So welcome to our candidates as well. The rules for tonight are fairly simple. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves at the beginning and 60 seconds at the end to close. For each of the questions that they are asked, they'll have 90 seconds to answer the question, and then if there needs to be a response, an additional 30 seconds after all of the candidates have had an opportunity to respond to the question. These time limits will be strictly monitored. So let's introduce the candidates now. Welcome, boys, to the Assistant Commissioner Debate. And let's start with Drew Mahold. Drew, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, folks. My name is Drew Mahold. I've been playing fantasy football for 15 years, and I am very glad to be running for assistant commissioner in the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League. I do have some experience in the commissioner role. I am currently the secretary assistant to the deputy commissioner of my other fantasy football league that I'm in. And I also was a commissioner previously one other time. So I have experience. I like to reward people for good decisions and also give people opportunity to make up for bad decisions. So those are the principles I live by in fantasy football, and I would love to have your vote.
Thank you to Drew Mahold. Let's go to Lucas Lawrenson. Lucas, you are next up for your introduction.
Well, hello, everybody. We've all met before, but it's good to be here running for assistant commissioner, and I'd like to take my time to thank Fitz Eichten for his endorsement of me, as well as Sam Olson. You know, it's a shame that he dropped out, but I'm very thankful that he chose to endorse me out of these two other lovely people that I'm running against. And I may not know a lot about football, but on the other hand, I do know a hell of a lot about fantasy, on the other hand, as I have been running many hours of D&D sessions with our commissioner, Zach, here, and also John Stevens, as well as Thomas. So may not know a lot about football, but a lot about fantasy. And I mean, that's 50% of fantasy football. So
thank you to Lucas Lawrenson for your introduction. And finally, let's go to John Stevens for your 60-second introduction.
Hey everyone, I'm John Stevens, running for assistant commissioner, as you know. Unlike Drew and Lucas, I do not have any experience and I do not have any endorsements. But what I hope to show you tonight is my overwhelming passion for fantasy football and specifically this league. This league has 100% of my attention. It always has. It always will as long as we have it, which I hope we have it forever. I hope that you all want to enjoy this league with me and Zach and everybody involved forever. And I hope tonight that I can show you that I am the best candidate for the job.
Thank you to John Stevens. Now, let's get into the questions. Earlier this week, a poll was conducted by Pong Stars Incorporated of likely voters in the assistant commissioner race. 25% of voters said that trading policies were the number one issue on their minds going into this election. How are each of you going to address the, frankly, insane amount of trading that occurs in the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League? And what, if any, changes would you make? Let's start with Drew Mahold.
I think the public is well aware of my stance on the trade policy as it stands now. I am against the trade veto period. I believe if two teams agree on a trade, that the trade should go through and that other teams in the league should not have a say in if that trade goes through. So that is the way I feel about the trade period. And that is, you know, I don't have any type of problem with the amount of trades that are going through. I actually support, and I love the way the league is thriving on trades. So I will absolutely endorse any trades out there. I just really want the trade veto period to be gone with. I believe if two teams decide on a trade, it should go through immediately. And then if we suspect any collusion at all, that is when a decision can be made to vote against it. But that is my stance on trades. I believe if a team wants to make a move to get better, they should be able to do that.
Thank you, Drew. Lucas, the same question to you. How would you address the number of trades in the league, and what changes, if any, would you make?
Well, I am glad that there's a lot of trading going on this season. I mean, I may not be the best at it. I'm probably going to start using a system to run trades through, kind of like John suggested in the group chat. But as far as my powers as assistant commissioner, should I be elected, I believe the assistant commissioner does not have the authority to change any of the rules. But nonetheless, I am mostly indifferent to the trade veto period, just because if something is clearly wrong with a trade and it's going against someone's best interest in a way that's clearly so lopsided that it will affect the league's balance as a whole, obviously we can use the commissioner's power and ask him to fix things. But I trust everybody on this, group that we have, that no one's going to be trying to do something like that and try to ruin the integrity of what we have going. So
great. Thank you, Lucas. Let's head down to John Stevens then. John, how are you going to address the trades in this league, and what changes, if any, would you make?
Yeah, I've been on both sides of this trade debate. Going into this week, I was actually in favor of the veto period. I think we saw a couple of good examples, mainly the Lucas and Tony trade, as a prime reason for why we need the veto period in the first place. Since then, Drew and Zach and Noel additionally have all made fantastic arguments as to what the veto period should mean. It should not be used because a trade is, favoring a team that is good or not favoring a team that's bad. It should really be to avoid collusion. So I don't plan as assistant commissioner as making that judgment by myself, just like my fellow competitor Lucas said. I plan on letting everybody else in the fantasy football league make that decision for themselves. And as your assistant commissioner, I think the first thing that I'll do in office is call for a vote and stop this nonsense of having to wait until next season to make this decision. Let's just make it now. It's a hot topic. Everybody wants to voice their opinion. And I think we'll all feel better if we can just have a vote and move forward from whatever the decision is.
Strong words. If there is anybody on the debate stage who wishes to respond to another opponent's comments, now is the time for your 30-second response.
I don't know if we could trust John with trades here. I mean, if anybody watched the ad that I posted that shows his shenanigans that he tried to pull with the innocent trade that I proposed, everybody just give each other their 16th round picks just for fun. Nobody cares about 16th round picks. Meanwhile, John on the other end, he's like, maybe no one will notice if I just give myself Noel's first round pick. But I mean, I'm not saying John's a bad guy, but can we really trust him with these trades?
Well, I'm going to address that comment. First of all, that is fake news. That is just untrue. The screenshots that you saw were doctored. There is absolutely zero credible evidence to suggest that I changed the trade. I don't see it in Sleeper. I don't see it anywhere within the app. It's only in this screenshot that my competitor has provided. So I'm not really going to acknowledge it from this point forward, but it is fake news.
You can look at this history in the Sleeper
All right,
app.
Lucas, you're cut off. You've used your entire 30 seconds.
I would like to say that I have, since the political ads have really stormed through the media lately, I have refrained from that. I do not believe in attacking my opponents as much as I have seen in this race. But I will add that I do agree with Mr. Stevens, and I have the same plan of calling for a vote immediately to overturn the trade veto period that is in place now.
Wonderful. Well, let's move on to our second question of the night then. Healthcare has been an issue this year, both with COVID and injuries, all just running rampant through the league. What is your healthcare plan for the players in our league? And we will start with Lucas this time. Lucas, what's your plan for healthcare?
Well, as you can see, we have great healthcare. It's available for all my players. They've all needed it. So I think that if I'm elected to be assistant commissioner, I would offer the same kind of availability to everybody else. Hopefully nobody else needs the same amount of attention that my players have needed, but we're here for them. I get them out there. I get them off the field as soon as they're injured. I make sure that they're sitting on the bench or in injury reserve. So I'm not trying to push them to anything. Saquon Barkley, he's take all the time you need. bud. But I hope you do get better. And I promise I would provide this same stellar healthcare for all that that my team has to everybody else.
All right, John, let's head over to you. What is your healthcare plan for the players impacted by COVID and other injuries in our league?
Yeah, I think Lucas had a good answer. I want to focus a little bit more on the healthcare of our own team owners. Sam Olsen recently was diagnosed with COVID-19. I think that I'm a very compassionate person. I showed my support for Sam Olsen, making sure that he knows that I'm here for him, and I'm absolutely willing to do everything that I can in my power from my home state of Wisconsin to help him all the way over in South Dakota. I really just want to make sure that everybody in this league is healthy. I will regularly check in on them as your assistant commissioner, just to make sure that everybody's doing well mentally, physically, and to make sure that, fantasy football can continue. We don't want anybody to feel unsafe or unhealthy to the point where it prevents them from being the best manager or team owner that they can. So I plan on making sure that all the team owners in this league are healthy and happy and ready to compete with fantasy football.
Thank you to John. Drew Mahold, you are next up. What is your healthcare plan for the league?
I plan to institute a bubble for all the players that are on our teams. I think that should be the next step that is taken, given the rising number of COVID-19 cases that we have and our teams are dealing with right at this point. So I also plan to stay as far away from possible as from the Tennessee Titans medical staff. They do not deserve any employment in this Pong Stars Fantasy Football League. So I will stay as far away from them as possible. And I plan to institute a bubble so that these COVID-19 cases can go down and our fantasy football seasons can continue.
Thank you to Drew. Is there any response to any of the competitors? Now is your opportunity to use 30 seconds of additional time.
I'm just curious as to how Drew Mahold, as assistant commissioner of this fantasy football league, is planning on instituting a bubble for the National Football League, a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I'm not sure how the assistant commissioner powers transfer to the NFL, but I'd love to be enlightened.
I agree. It seems kind of like an overreach of power here on Drew's part.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I got a little cough.
Sure, are you doing okay? I just want to make sure.
I am. Thank you. I appreciate it, Mr.
Get a
Stevens.
test. I mean,
30 seconds to you, Drew, to respond to the comments by your fellow debaters.
No, I that's part of the benefit of me being in other fantasy football leagues. I know Mr. Stevens made sure that he was telling everybody that he's in one league, but the benefit of being in other leagues is that I have a network of other commissioners, other high league officials that have been working on this plan for a long time to institute a bubble. So we're going to institute this as soon as possible.
All right.
Can't wait. I'm excited.
Wonderful. I'm excited to see hopefully some of these plans come through with whoever is engaged with that assistant commissioner role. Let's move on to question number 3 here. Balance is such an important part of being the assistant commissioner in the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League, both in balancing me ideologically as well as physical balance. 50% of likely voters in this race indicated balance is their top issue going into this election. How will you act as a counterweight to me ideologically, as well as what is your physical routine to keep your balance on slippery surfaces? Let's start with John.
Well, I got to say, and I said it in our text message earlier, but the fact that the likely voters have chosen me as their most likely to have great physical balance is really, truly an honor. And I plan on upholding that great reputation as I move into the assistant commissioner role. As for the more ideological balance that I would provide to Zach, we've already differed on a few positions throughout the fantasy football season. For example, the latest trade debacle, I initially voted against Zach, and ultimately I ended up changing that decision. And I think that that's what's going to allow me to bring balance to the league. I plan on listening to everybody. I plan on being open-minded and not necessarily making the decision or bringing that balance just by myself. I plan on gauging the input of everybody around. I think the commissioner has much more of a duty to focus on his own opinion, but I think as assistant commissioner, I can be that connection to all the team owners in the league and provide their stance as the counter balance to Commissioner Zach Eichten.
Wonderful. Thank you to John. Let's head to Drew Mahold then. Drew, what is your plan to balance me as well as keep your own physical balance on slippery surfaces?
Yeah, I mean, of course, any assistant commissioner should be thriving when it comes to keeping physical balance on slippery surfaces. And I will honestly give the voters credit for not choosing me as the favorite there in this particular category. They got this one right. I will give them that. In terms of ideological balance with Commissioner Zach Eichten, I think it's very important. Would like to just respect the majority. I know I've been in the minority on this trade veto thing for some time now, and I have voiced my opinion. I know it's been shut down for most of the time. Balance throughout the league means respecting the majority. And I know myself and Commissioner Zach Eichten, when I am elected, we will bounce ideas off each other. We will come up with ideas and propose them to the league, understanding that, the majority of the league has to agree to these if they're going to be put in place. So that is, I guess, my stance on balance in all kinds of forms of balance.
Wonderful. Thank you, Drew. Lucas, balance obviously being a top issue in this race. How are you going to balance me ideologically, as well as how do you keep your balance on slippery surfaces?
Well, if you want to get down to some big business here and talk about duty, I've been spinning around in the toilet bowl for a while here, and I think people need a representative for some of those lower tier teams, and I've spent a lot of time down there with them, so I know them quite well, and I think I would do a good job representing them and bringing balance to some of these more elite teams in the league. And as far as physical balance, I've been trying to stay working out during this lockdown. It's been kind of hard living a not sedentary, I don't know, but laid back.
You got it, man.
Laid back working from home lifestyle. It's kind of tough to stay active, but I've been trying, and I'll go out and buy a slack line if that's what it takes to keep the best balance here for the league.
Perfect. Thank you, Lucas. Is there anybody who wishes to respond to any of your opponent's comments from this question?
I am kind of confused by the statement from Lucas claiming that he has spent a large time. He has spent time at the bottom of the league, but he is a bit of an elitist. He is a champion of this football league, so I do kind of doubt his ability to relate to the teams who've missed playoffs and taken last place in the past. I've been there. I'm not a champion. I don't claim to be an elitist. I'm absolutely not an elitist, but I think Lucas, as a past champion, is an elitist, and I don't think he will be able to really identify or conform to those lower teams on the totem pole.
All right, thank you. Drew or Lucas, 30 seconds to respond.
I agree with John. That's all I have to say.
All right. Lucas, final 30 seconds for you.
Okay, well, I do see where you're coming from. As a former champion, I've been there as the winner and the top team, but I didn't necessarily perform the greatest that year as far as overall points scored. I just got lucky, but I think that actually benefits me because I know what it's like to both be up there towards the top and also towards the bottom here with these more recent years. So it's a nice dichotomy of both the upper levels of playing and the lower levels of playing. And that
thank you, Lucas. Your time is up. Let's move on to the next question here. One part of being assistant commissioner is going to be innovation and content creation. What is your plan to innovate within this league? And what is your content generation plan coming into this role as assistant commissioner? Drew, we'll start with you this time.
Well, Mr. Eichten, to be frank, I'd have to change my name, but also to be frank, content creation is my full-time job outside of this fantasy football league. So I do feel like I have a very significant advantage in this department and also in this election. So my plan, of course, is to use all social media platforms. We will expand past Twitter. We will use Instagram. We will use Twitter. We will use TikTok. We will use YouTube. We will use any social media platform out there. And of course, content creation is, the foundation of building a brand nowadays in 2020. And so the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League is, of course, everybody wants to know about it, right? I mean, we have families, we have friends, and of course, just the avid fantasy football enthusiast wants to know about the next move, the next trade in this league. And so we need to provide that information for them. And I plan to use any platform possible to do so.
Thank you, Drew. Let's go to Lucas then. Lucas, what is your innovation and content generation plan for the league?
Well, I think I'm going to go back to an idea that the commissioner and Thomas Strawn and I were involved in earlier, with an idea to expand on the fantasy aspect of fantasy football and bring in some creative storytelling that we could get everybody involved in. Maybe develop a storyline around some characters and get everybody involved in helping to decide what they do in the story overall and how they interact with it, so that everybody can take part in this sort of collaborative storytelling that takes place in a fantasy world of fantasy football.
Great. Thank you, Lucas. John, let's move to you. What's your plan for innovation and content generation for the league?
Yeah, well, I think, obviously I don't claim to be the content expert that Drew Mahowald is, as it is his full-time job, but I think I have demonstrated my ability to create content and be an active contributor to the Rat Hole. I've been in numerous segments. I have helped out with the graphics for the wildly popular Pick'em segment. So I plan on continuing where I left off. I agree with Drew Mahowald. I think it is time to expand past Twitter. I'm not sure about all the platforms, how necessary they would be, but I do think it is time to take that next step and really just ramp up the number of tweets so we can get the most possible engagements. I think Drew has a pretty picture of what this league is and how everybody wants to know what's going on. I don't necessarily think that's the truth right now. I think that could be the case if we take that next step, but we need a lot more engagement on our posts. I plan on increasing the number of posts dramatically so that we can increase the number of eyeballs on our fantasy football league, so that we can generate more fans going forward.
Thank you, John. We have 30 seconds for each of you to respond to what any others have set up on the stage after that question. I don't know if any of you want to go first, though.
Drew Mahowald, do you use TikTok?
I have no comment on that. I'd rather not deal with international relations. Do not need to be involved in this discussion. But I do plan on using it as any social media platform that will expand the audience of this league.
Well, as an avid TikTok user myself, as demonstrated by one of the text messages I sent today, which was a TikTok, I plan on using TikTok more than any other platform. It is wildly popular, by far the most popular social media to date, and I am the only candidate, is my understanding, that uses TikTok on a regular basis.
I would like to reiterate that I had no comment. I did not say I did not use TikTok. I also did not say I am using TikTok. I am just simply not commenting on that specific social media platform.
Drew Mahowald does not use TikTok.
John, you're out of time. And Drew, you are now out of time as well. Lucas, you have 30 seconds to respond.
All right. Well, I put in hours and hours generating content for Commissioner Eichten and participant Thomas Strawn, and also John Stevens, to play hours and hours of Dungeons and Dragons. And that is a lot of work. So I do have experience generating content, not necessarily stuff that everybody sees and posts this on social media. But I think I could bring that creativity to the league, and I think it would do well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let's move on to another question then. Fairness as a leader is incredibly important. How would you, as assistant commissioner, help rule in a dispute where two teams are in this dispute, where one is looking for more fairness in a gray area of the rules and one is using the rules gray area to exploit them? Let's start with Lucas. How would you begin looking at this in a fair way as assistant commissioner?
So what could I ask for an example of what you mean by that question? Like,
let's talk about Keepergate.
Using the gray area within a gray area sounds like Inception to me. I guess I'm confused by what do you mean by that?
All right. I will reframe it. Let's look at Keepergate. All right. We had two teams who were using a gray area in the rules to try to exploit them for their own team's gain at the expense of what the intention of the rule was. How would you address the fairness of that, and what would your role as assistant commissioner be in helping resolve this dispute?
I guess as far as Keepergate, the way that I looked at it and why I accepted the trade from Tony, which was obviously him trying to game the system, was that either all of it is going to be okay or none of it can be okay as far as the trading in order to keep or change your keepers for the year. So the way that the trade previous to Tony happened kind of seemed like it could be used that way. And if we're going to allow that, then what is stopping him from doing that? So the way that I see it is that my stance on gray areas is to make a hard stance on it. Either it's right or it's wrong. And you have to be willing to, put your foot down and say, no, this is not applicable now, and it's not applicable ever, and it's never going to be okay, or this is always going to be allowed, and it's always going to be okay.
Thank you, Lucas, for that response. Let's move to John Stevens then. John, as a protagonist in the Keepergate saga, how would you, as assistant commissioner, have used that position to resolve that dispute?
Yeah, I think I'll let my reputation or track record speak for itself. I was the first person to call what I was seeing in this first trade between Sam and Thomas. I was against it from the beginning. I saw it as being unfair, already a misinterpretation of the rules, trading keepers and then changing your keepers based on the trade after the keeper deadline. I was actively voicing my opinion and making sure that everyone knew that I did not agree with this, taking advantage of the gray area. And then when Tony and Lucas, further exploited it, I just put my foot down. I was the person to call for the vote. I believe my competitor, Drew Mahold, was seconding that, so I appreciate that. But I've always been on the right side of this. I've always been on the side of fairness for the league. Lucas was a blatant participant in this, taking advantage of the gray area, so I don't know how you could ever trust him to be fair moving forward. But my plan is simple. It's just to use my head and think logically about the rules. And anytime that I see someone taking advantage of it, I'm going to call it out. I'm not afraid to hurt people's feelings. I'm going to let them know when they're taking advantage of the rules and not treating their competitors fairly. I'm going to let them know, and I'm going to bring it to everyone's attention.
Thank you, John. Drew, let's talk about Keepergate. As John mentioned, you were the second on the vote calling to resolve that dispute. As assistant commissioner, what other steps would you have been taking to resolve that dispute before it had to go to a full league vote?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do want to commend Mr. Stevens for bringing that to a vote and calling things out the way he did at the time. I think it was a really good move for the league long term for him to speak out on that. And when you talked about gray areas with the rules, right? A Keepergate, I think the word that's really been missing from all of this is collusion. And the collusion that was evident by Tony is kind of what sparked all of this. And when I saw the collusion and I saw it was cleared, that was when I kind of was like, all right, we need to vote on this, and it needs to be overturned. And so my theory on fairness and on these policies that we are referring to right now is anything with collusion is a no, right? I'm not going to allow collusion. I'm going to use a phrase from John here. I will put my foot down when it comes to collusion. But other than that, the rules are the rules. Black and white. If there's something that is not referred to in the rules, you can do that, and then after that, it'll be up to the league vote. So, and really, again, it's just up to collusion. And if it's about exploiting, collusion seems like a pretty similar term to me. So, just don't be exploiting the rules, and we won't have any problems.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. 30 seconds to any of you who wish to make any comments regarding your opponent's stances.
Yeah, of course. I would like to just address the fact that, bring up the question, would we have taken a closer look at Sam's trade were it not for Tony and I bringing up the thought that somebody could exploit the way that the trade was working for Sam's favor? I don't know if we would have, but that's my main goal and why I accepted that trade, is so that we could have that talk and somebody would bring about a vote so that we could say,
A white knight.
I mean,
Lucas, you're out of time. Thank you. John or Drew, 30 seconds to either of you.
That is just fake news. That is fake news. And there is absolutely no way that Lucas accepted that trade to call attention to the previous actions, because Lucas wasn't calling out the previous actions by Sam or Thomas. And I was, and I always was, and I always called it out. So I highly doubt that that is the reason that Lucas accepted that trade. Fake news.
I deleted my.
Lucas, you're out of time. Drew, 30 seconds to you.
I do agree with Mr. Stevens, and I think the points he made about Lucas's comments at the time did not seem to be calling out the actions that were committed and the rules exploitation at the time. So I do agree with Mr. Stevens there. And I also do want to add, too, that I think it was somewhat unclear at the time as to the trade that involved Sam Olsen and Thomas Strachan, if there was collusion going on, a clear attempt to exploit the rules, but there was a pretty clear attempt in the trade that involved Lucas and Tony, and that is why
Drew, you're out of time. Thank you. Let's move on.
I agree with Drew that Thomas and Sam are not trying to exploit the rules in the first one, but they did. And that's why I called it out.
And John, you're not out of time as well. Let's move on to our final question of the evening. One part of this league that the commissioner has been a huge fan of and would like to continue for our league is the role of independent defensive players. Despite a league vote going into this season, we did not go with that system. Let's start with John. John, what is your position on independent defensive players, and would you institute it in this league if you had full control?
Yeah, this is where I'm going to bring balance to the league. I absolutely do not think individual defensive players should be a part of this league. I think it's too big of a commitment. And the only reason I know this is because I am actually participating in the individual defensive player league, unlike my other two competitors. I wanted to test it out to see if I thought it could be used going forward. After the first week, I'll continue to try it out, give it a couple more chances. But so far, I'm just really not liking what I'm seeing. And ultimately, the participation in that IDP league speaks for itself. Clearly, the people of our Pong Stars League do not want individual defensive players in our league. Otherwise, they'd be testing it out just like me. So I'm going to listen and let people's actions do the talking, and I will take a firm stance against individual defensive players. If people ultimately decide to vote it through, I will support it. But if Commissioner Zach Eichten tries to use any commissioner powers to institute IDP without the approval of the entire league, I will strike him down.
Thank you. Let's move to Drew Mahold then. Drew, what is your stance on IDP, especially in relation to this league?
Well, first, I just want to pose a question to the viewers out there. Mr. Stevens made it clear early on in the show that the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League is the only league that he is focused on and has his full attention. Clearly, that is not the case if he is participating in this independent defensive players league.
So only league that I'm focused on. So I am participating.
John,
clearly your attention is elsewhere at some parts of the week in terms of your fantasy football.
I have a lot of time.
So I would like my time to speak, sir. Is that okay with you? Are we good there? Okay. Now, with that said, I agree with everything Mr. Stevens said. So in terms of independent defensive players, I do not think they belong in fantasy football. I think fantasy football is reserved for offensive players and then team total defenses. And I agree completely with what Mr. Stevens said, and that I will strike down Commissioner Zach Eichten if he gets power happy and tries to implement them into the league on his own.
That's a yikes.
Thank you, Drew. Lucas, 90 seconds to you. What is your stance on IDP players? IDP.
Personally, I don't know, just because the amount of time that I have to focus on fantasy football and my offensive players is enough for me to be confused as is. But it is exciting. It's an exciting idea. And I think if the commissioner would be wanting to implement it, I would support bringing it up more and trying to sort of ease everybody into it. If everybody tries it out and they don't like it, obviously we can just get rid of it. But if we never try it out, how do we know if we're not going to like it, kind of thing? So, while personally, I don't think I would be able to handle it just because, it's hard enough for me to manage the players that I have now. I wouldn't be totally against our commissioner if they tried to get people to test it out.
Whoever wants to has 30 seconds now to respond to any of your opponent's comments regarding IDP.
Yeah, I just want to address the comment by Drew Mahold. I never claimed to only play in one fantasy football league. He is correct. I only focus on one fantasy football league. I, am exploring with this in IDP because I wanted to test it out, but it doesn't really have much of my focus. In full disclosure, I'm involved in another league, but it was as a favor to my roommate because they had 9 people. They needed a 10th. It has very little of my attention. It's only a $10 buy-in. My running backs suck. I have Kenny Drake, so it's getting no attention. This league has 100% of my attention.
Drew Mahold, you have 30 seconds to respond.
So there's some interesting verbiage being used here. So John has said multiple times now that this league has his full attention, which I certainly hope it does, and he's not lying about that. But then he talks about this other league that he brings up out of nowhere, which is a very interesting idea to do when he's claiming that he has his full attention on our league. And then he says it has very little of his attention. If 100% of your attention is devoted to this league, then wouldn't that mean 0% of your attention is devoted to another league? And instead he uses very little.
Time. Thank you for your comment.
Sorry about that. 1% of my attention.
John, you're out of time as well. John, you're cut off.
I'm not even in any other football fantasy. This is the only fantasy football league I've ever been in.
It's your opportunity, Lucas. 30 seconds. John, it is no longer your time. Lucas,
this is the first time.
Seconds to you.
This is the first league I've ever been in, and it's the only league I'm ever going to be in, baby. And that's what I've got to say about that. They've got my full commitment. I'm never going to give you up. I'm never going to let you down. I'm never going to run around and desert you.
Commissioner Zach Eichen also is involved in like 5 leagues.
Hold on. This is John, you're out of time. You have been stopped.
John, you know the rules, and so do I. Okay?
We're no strangers. Mute this man.
All right. And Lucas, you're out of time now as well. So thank you to all of you for participating in tonight's fantasy football debate for the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League Assistant Commissioner position you are running for to be elected for. You have 60 seconds. God dang it. Something happened on my screen, and now I can't see anything.
Can you hear us, Phil?
Yeah, 1 minute. Sorry.
Can we just do the last minute without you seeing?
Take that out in post.
Yeah, this is why we didn't do it live. Hold on.
We'll just edit that out. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
Yep. All right.
We'll do it live.
Sorry. The other video finished getting videoed. All right. I'm a big, tough commissioner. All right. Thank you to all of our participants for participating in tonight's debate for Assistant Commissioner of the Pong Stars Fantasy Football League. The election is coming up on Tuesday, October 13th, and I hope all of you, as well as all of our listeners and watchers, will participate in our ranked choice of voting method of choosing the next Assistant Commissioner. Each of you now have 60 seconds to give one last final push for yourself being elected to this position. And we will start with Lucas Lawrenson.
Well, let me just say, if you vote for me, it'll be the best vote of your life. You're not going to need to do any other votes. I'm going to be the greatest. It'll be so good. We'll do so much fantasy football, assistant commissioning. You're going to get sick of assistant commissioning. It'll be the greatest. It'll be huge. And you know what? These other guys, Sleepy John and Drew, he doesn't even, small Drew, little Drew, even though he's taller than me, his brain, little, small, doesn't know anything. So if you vote for me, it'll be a good vote, the best vote. So please vote for me. I don't need to beg for your votes though. So if you feel like voting for me because it'll be the best idea in your life, vote for me. But I don't need it, but I want it. So, and I get what I want.
All right, thank you, Lucas. John Stevens, it is your opportunity to give a 60-second final push for why people should vote for you as assistant commissioner.
Yeah, I just want to take a second to commend Commissioner Zach Eichten for making this a ranked choice vote. I think that's an excellent decision. I think it's something the United States should adopt. I just want to commend Commissioner Zach Eichten for that decision. And my second point is I just want everybody to vote. I know that there was a recent poll that found that 100% of likely voters were planning on voting in this election. But saying that you're going to vote and actually getting out of bed and going to the polls is a different thing. So I just want to urge everybody to make sure to get out there and vote. I'll give a little plug for myself. I think that tonight everybody has seen that I'm the strongest candidate. I have the best policy in terms of fairness and any collusion. Interruption during my final remarks. Okay. But anyway, I really want to just urge everybody to get out there and vote and go to the polls whenever this election is taking place.
Thank you, John Stevens. And finally, Drew Mahold, last word in tonight's debate.
Yeah, I first actually want to thank Sam Olson and Noel Teigen for their campaigns and for their participation in the league and in their run for assistant commissioner. Greatly appreciate both of what you guys have done and bringing awareness to this campaign and bringing awareness to this election as well. But this league's about fun, right? This is about fun. We're here to have fun. We pay $50 for 4 to 5 months of entertainment. That's exactly what it is. And I want to maximize that entertainment for you. And I feel like as assistant commissioner, I feel like, that's what that is my platform, making this fun. And I want to reward people for making good decisions. I want to punish people for making bad decisions. And I want to, every single week, this needs to be something that you look forward to. And, we're all friends here. We're all from the same school, and we all love each other very deeply. As sentimental as is going to get it. So I really would appreciate your support, and I would really want to make this a fun time for all of us for now and as many years in the future as we want it to continue.
Thank you to Drew, as well as to Lucas and John for those wonderful parting words. Just as a reminder, as I said earlier, the election will take place on Tuesday, October 13th. Each of you will get a link to vote in our ranked choice voting system. And I'm your host, Commissioner Zach Eichten. And remember to vote.